Hello,
Can you hear
hello.
me?
I can hear you. I can't see you right now. Are you able to?
I don't have my webcam today
Oh, okay. So
for
we'll
the
be
audio.
doing it. We'll just be doing. You'll be speaking like a little flashing box or something like that. That's okay. We all know you're a very handsome guy, so that's fine.
People should be looking at the Bitcoin chart instead.
There you go. Maybe would you want? Do you have, well, we could share that or something. I don't know if I could share something Bitcoin related. Well, I am. First of all, thank you for doing this. It's kind of interesting as time goes by. The carnivore diet becomes less crazy or more popular, and Bitcoin also seems to be following that same trajectory, and perhaps even more so with a lot of big companies getting on board. We're seeing, Elon Musk just dumped in $1.5 billion into Bitcoin. Some other big corporations have done that. I watched an interview with a guy named Michael Saylor, who I'm sure you're familiar with. He seems to be a pretty bullish and big advocate on that. I guess he's from Microsystems, but what I really want to do, I mean, there may be some questions on what is Bitcoin and that type of stuff. I think we've gone over that before. We had Safe on, a month or two back, and so we kind of got exposed to that. But I'm kind of more like into a practical. What are your thoughts? How to, and for those that don't know, introduce yourself as to your background, because you're one of the guys that has been, doing this stuff for a long time and has a lot of insight into Bitcoin. And so let's start with that, Michael. So what do you know about Bitcoin? What got you into it? Why do you do it? And then let's go into some of these other things. And
Yeah, well,
also, but sorry, I have to mention that Michael's a carnivore as well. So we got to know he's a good guy.
yes. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. My name is Michael Goldstein, also known as Bitstein online. Um, I've been in the carnivore world since about 2015. You guys may have seen my site, justmeat.co. So I've been kind of interested in that. With Bitcoin, I learned about it as early as 2011, but I got really into it in late 2012. And I got into it because I had a strong interest for many years in um, money and banking from like an economics perspective, specifically from the Austrian School of Economics. And so I was very much into the idea of a sound money that wasn't, printed away at the whim of the government. And once I came to understand what Bitcoin was, I immediately latched on, and I've been, obsessed ever since. Um, so yeah, in that space, I run a website. It's kind of like the Just Meat of Bitcoin. It's the Nakamoto Institute, nakamotoinstitute.org. And it has sort of primary resources on the history of Bitcoin, the public writings of the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, as well as, the great essays of the crypto anarchist and cypherpunk thinkers from the 80s and 90s that were kind of building this culture that Bitcoin emerged out of, that kind of set the scene of what are the types of problems in society we're trying to solve by creating these cryptographic systems, as well as doing economic analysis of Bitcoin. I'm also the co-host of the Noted Bitcoin podcast at noted.org, Noded.
Let me ask you, I mean, I saw in this, and I've kind of been obviously interested in this, but it's not been a full priority of mine. And I still haven't yet to get some. So it sounds like I'll have to get some fairly soon. But let me ask you, I mean, I think Michael Saylor described Bitcoin as not digital currency or digital money, but more like digital gold, and that it is a hard asset. Can you kind of elaborate on that, or do you agree with what his sense was? And he said, you keep this because it continues to appreciate, and because you have this asset, you can utilize other forms of currency against that as almost a borrowing leverage device. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think what he's describing is spot on. I use different terminology, so I think when he's describing it as not a currency, what he's saying is that he doesn't view the Bitcoin units that on chain, like the base settlement layer, as a day-to-day payment system. That being said, I do view it as a monetary asset, and the very best monetary asset. So what he's describing is the fact that, with a monetary asset, you want to, he's describing it effectively, people call it a store of value. So basically, the idea is that when you hold on to it, you can know that, or you believe that, in the future, the good will be able to fetch as much value in the marketplace as when you first acquired it. With Bitcoin, it's special because of the fact that it can't be diluted. As long as the Bitcoin economy grows, which either means more adoption, more economic productivity in the Bitcoin world, the more Bitcoins are worth. And so it actually appreciates in value rather sharply over the past decade. It's gone up an annualized rate of about 200%. So it's tripled every year over the course of a decade. And when you have those kind of metrics and the fact that it can't be diluted, there are only 21 million Bitcoins. There will never be any more. It's a little hard to get someone to want to give it up and go spend it on a coffee. Like, why would you give that up when, like, do you want to buy a coffee now, or do you want to buy Starbucks, the company, later? Like the growth potential is so much higher that people tend to think more long-term and about bigger things than just the day-to-day payments. And for the day-to-day payments, there exists a lot of other payment rails that you can, get yourself into, like he's saying, with borrowing to get dollars. And it's like, well, yeah, everyone accepts dollars. You can go spend dollars to get your, coffee or ribeyes or whatever. You don't need to spend Bitcoins on chain in order to get those things. It's in your interest to want to just hold on to it forever.
Yeah, and that's, that was made pretty clear to me. He's saying, like I said, what Bitcoin originally started out at whatever, a penny or whatever it was 12 years ago, and now it's
zero.
And now if you, obviously those guys that came in and bought, whatever amount of Bitcoin, each one is now individually worth what, 55,000, or maybe, that was the other day. I don't know what it is now, and it's projected, maybe it'll go as high. Maybe. So here's the concern. So some people say, now these corporations are getting in. And now they're going to artificially elevate the price, just like a stock. They're just basically getting in, they're driving up the price on this, and then it's going to inevitably go down and they're going to sell it off, and the little guy's going to get hurt with this. What are your thoughts on, should you wait for it to dip again to buy in, or what are the thoughts on that? Because when the big companies get in there, they are able to manipulate markets like this and change things.
Yeah, so I think for trying to make sense of a monetary asset like Bitcoin, we really have to look at the fundamentals. It's not a stock. We value stocks in a much different way than we look at money. When we look at money, we want to look at how scarce it is. Well, Bitcoin is the scarcest good, just outright. We want to look at how durable, how portable, how divisible, all of these things. And when you go through that checklist, Bitcoin is just stellar. It's better than fiat. It's better than gold on basically every front. It's the best monetary technology we've ever had. We could get into why it's some of those things, but that's my argument, is that when we look at the fundamentals, it's simply the best currency. And if it has that scarcity, and you believe that the Bitcoin economy is going to grow at all, that necessarily means that the price is going to go up. And because of how few there are and how big the economy is relative to where Bitcoin stands today, the price can go up a magnificent amount, just absolutely mind-blowing amount. Like you've described, it's gone from a price of zero to originally a price of, way less than a penny, to now a price of, I'm looking, it's about 47,000. It dipped from the other day, but we're, about where we were a week or two ago, which was a mind-blowing amount. The thought that we're at 47,000 is just incredible. So it's grown by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of percent. But it's also still such a small network that there's so much more room that it could potentially grow. So with all this in mind, you're going to want to just people would want to just hold it. And all these companies, they're valuing it that same way. Like, they're going to want to put it on their balance sheet. You hear Michael Saylor talk about how, he doesn't want to sell for 100 years. And, frankly, 100 years, he'll be dead. So it's like, he's not going to sell in this lifetime, basically, is what he's saying. And I think most of the people who are making big moves into Bitcoin are starting to come around to that viewpoint of what this represents as just such a scarce digital asset. So with that in mind, you know, companies, I actually think that there's a bit of a different incentive, which is a big company that has a lot of money and a lot of cash flow, who sees the value of Bitcoin, would actually probably want to suppress the price as much as possible and try to keep it from going too high because they want to buy low. Because if the price is low, they can buy as much as they possibly can. Whereas if the price goes up, then, you know, obviously you're not going to be able to afford as much. So I don't really worry. And also if they were, you know, to increase the price of Bitcoin, you know, very high, the utility of Bitcoin is tied to the price, because the price represents how liquid is it, how easily would I be able to get rid of my Bitcoins and sell it to someone else so that I can get whatever it is that I need. That's the whole point of why we have money. That's why you have cash in your wallet, is because you know that if, you know, you're going down the street and it's like you need a bottle of water, you can give someone you know, $1 and they'll give you a bottle of water. It's a highly liquid good. Money is the most liquid good. So yeah, so as the price goes up, it's becoming more liquid, meaning it's more useful as a money, which means the fundamentals actually get better. So, you know, we do see these cycles where it kind of goes beyond what the, you know, liquidity of the network can actually handle. And we see these peaks and they crash down. But we notice that every time that it crashes down, it's actually well above what it had previously been an all-time high. So, you know, we saw in 2017, it went up all the way to 19,000. But even in the most bearish part of the entire market, which I guess would be about March 2020, when there was the COVID market movements, that was like the most bearish moment in that whole cycle. And it was almost triple the price of the previous all-time high. So we just see that it's still growing. And yes, you do have these hype cycles and they come down, but zooming out, that's not really an issue. What I would say to your question about, you know, should people time the market? My position on that is absolutely not, because Bitcoin is a global currency being used by, you know, millions of people all around the world, buying and selling, making decisions about how they want to interact with it. It's an extremely dynamic system, and it's not one that you're going to be able to kind of tie to any particular narrative at any given moment. So, and there's always going to be a bigger fish with more money that can kind of like, you know, play around you. So my recommendation to people who have studied Bitcoin and they've come to the conclusion that they're interested in putting some savings into Bitcoin, I recommend a DCA strategy, dollar cost averaging. And that allows you to focus on the long term and just buy a little bit every day, every week, every month, whatever it is, however your cash flow situation is. And that way you're just steadily accumulating for the long term. And some days you'll buy high, some days you'll buy low, but you'll be focused on this long-term picture of Bitcoin rather than trying to beat out short-term people. There's been too many people throughout the years who say like, oh, well, you know, Bitcoin is so high at 6,000. I'll wait until it goes down a bit before I buy. And then it goes down, and it's not like they show up then to buy. In fact, right now, you know, it crashed a bit from the other day. There are all those people saying like, oh, it's too high now. Well, it's like, okay, like now's your chance. Are you going to take it? And what I find is a lot of people, they still stay on the sidelines, even though that threshold has been met where it's gone down. So DCAing is a good way for a person who wants to get in to dip their toes in. So you're just getting from 0 to 1, and you're focusing on that steady accumulation over time, and focusing, you know, Bitcoin is savings. You know, no one should be getting into Bitcoin if they're not interested in being in it as a multi-year savings opportunity. So, you know, no, people have lost a lot of money buying Bitcoin and selling it over the course of even like a year. But the worst off someone has done by holding Bitcoins for 4-year periods would be about like 426%. which is not too shabby. So, you should always be thinking in the long term anyway. So a DCA strategy just kind of keeps you in that mindset and focuses on just, it's just like any other savings. You get your paycheck and you say, I'm going to put 10-15% into my savings account and the rest is for expenses or whatever. The same thing, you would just decide, maybe 5% or, whatever I'm going to put into my Bitcoin, and then, do that every month.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the point is obviously within a period of 3 months, 6 months, a year, it's going to fluctuate up and down, but no matter what the price is you buy it at 10 years from now, it's almost assuredly going to be much, much greater value. So even if you had to buy it at $50,000 a share, a coin, you could buy one part of that same amount might be worth 500 million, of whatever fragment you got of that, 10 years from now, supposedly.
Right.
You said there's only 21 million Bitcoins, potentially available. And I understand some of it is yet to be mined, and we can talk about the mining process. But what happens if some company comes in and buys up all 21 million, or there's a conglomerate of companies, they buy up all of them and they sit on them and there's no more available? Is that a realistic possibility that only these companies can hold that asset and no one else can even get into it? Is that possible?
So I would say no, because first and foremost, you can only buy Bitcoins that are available to sell. So I think most Bitcoiners that you would talk to, they're not going to be selling their Bitcoins to you. But there are some people who, for some reason, are okay with giving up their precious, magic internet units. So I don't worry in that sense. But yeah, I mean, companies could buy large amounts. I mean, I'm flabbergasted at how much, MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor was able to swoop in and buy 70,000 Bitcoins, which is like unfathomable to me. I could only wish, I could have such an amount. I'm just a, normal guy. So I do not get to, buy that much, but that's a good thing, because also it drives up the price, and once again it makes Bitcoin more useful. So this will happen. Institutions will be buying up large amounts, but once again, they're only going to be able to buy what people sell, and the thing still goes up in value. For normal people, this is a great chance to study up and decide if this is right for you. I would argue that it probably is right for just about everyone in the world. And if that's the case, then you can actually front run these institutions. Everyone who bought Bitcoins before August 2020 bought Bitcoins before MicroStrategy. And everyone who bought Bitcoins before, late January 2021 was able to front run Elon Musk. And so, all these institutions are in their waiting, but you can still get in. And even in the future, even if we had a world in which Bitcoin is the global reserve currency and it has a, purchasing power of, something like 10 million plus in today's money. If that was the case, it's the global reserve currency. So you'd still want to be saving your money in that. So it's not like it stops just because you've reached this peak. It's actually, that's just kind of the beginning. Now you get to live in a Bitcoin world. You would still want to be accumulating, Satoshis, the smallest unit of Bitcoin. You'd still be wanting to stack sats, as they say, because that's what people do with money. They save a little bit of money so they don't spend more than they earn, and they're able to build out a future for themselves. So the accumulation process never ends. It's just a matter of do you want to be able to front run those institutions or not? And you'll be better off either way, as long as you're going along with the shift to a Bitcoin economy.
Let me ask you about my understanding is Bitcoin is not designed or will not replace the dollar or replace gold or some of these other things, but it'll be sort of a different sort of universe, I suppose. And so we're still maybe still seeing some typical currency, but we're hearing something about some of the centralized banks are really looking into and exploring what's called a centralized bank digital currency. And some people are saying that that's going to basically be the answer to Bitcoin, and it's going to be better regulated, and there's going to be more security and safety within those sort of long time institutions. And the Bitcoin guys are a bunch of cowboys. What's your response to this centralized bank digital currency movement?
Yeah, so I don't think that they are competitors to Bitcoin. They can't compete. They're just not as good because none of them can offer the decentralized consensus that Bitcoin can. So with Bitcoin, you can run a full node at home and you can verify the network for yourself. You can know that you actually own the money. You can own the keys. You have full control. And you know with cryptographic certainty that the supply of the network is exactly what it ought to be, and that all of the transactions on the network are completely valid and not double spent or forged in some way. With any of these central bank currencies, they're necessarily centralized, and none of these central banks have any. They have like no experience at trying to maintain a system with integrity. If they did, we wouldn't have had to create Bitcoin in the first place. What these people tend to be interested in is not so much savings, which kind of Bitcoin ends up focusing on as its mean to becoming this monetary asset. They're very much focused on spending. And so a lot of what they talk about has to do with creating better payment rails, which might actually be very useful in many ways. Like the dollar system is very cumbersome, and it's a pain just to like ACH money, and it takes 3 to 5 days. It would be great if they improve those systems. But they're very much focused on those payment aspects. And yeah, I mean, they're interested in being able to focus on stopping what they view as illicit finance. Yeah, I mean, it's going to continue. They'll be rolling these systems out, but I don't think that they'll be able to convince people to choose their is it CB? I can't even. I can never get the central bank digital CBDC. It's a mouthful. I don't think they're going to be able to convince these CBDCs people to use those as their savings. Bitcoin will always be the better savings because people will know that it's scarce, that it's durable, that it's portable, that it's divisible, that it's all these things. Whereas at best, the CBDCs are going to be a nice payment rails that also come burdened with heavy regulation that can be wielded for all kinds of nefarious political purposes that people will probably not even want something to do with. Your nightmare would be if they decided to ban meat. I think all of us would be upset with that, and it's like suddenly they're like, these payments don't work anymore because it's going to a rancher instead of Bill Gates's soy farm or whatever. So Bitcoin will always be a specter for these people, and it'll be this giant behemoth of economic value, and I think other payment systems will be competing to take up the reins to be able to handle transactions that free and good people actually want to do.
Yeah, so obviously not all of us are Elon Musk or in charge of multi-billion-dollar corporations, so we have very different uses and goals. I mean, let's say the average person is making kind of average wage, wants to put in a couple $1,000s a year into Bitcoin, and over the next 20 years, and they get to retirement. What does it likely look like for them? How are they going to be able to utilize it? Do they give it to their kids, or do they just? I mean, how do you can you borrow against it? How does it become a usable asset to make your quality of life better?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it has what Saifedean calls number go up technology, NGU technology. So when you put money away in the form of Bitcoins, based on its historical prices and its fundamentals and how we kind of can think about how the market will continue to respond to Bitcoins and just sound money in general, the price of Bitcoins is going to continue to go up. So it means that if you put money away in Bitcoins today, you can know that tomorrow, and by tomorrow I mean a couple years down the line and further, there will be more value available for you to use. So you can actually think about your long-term future. You can think about your retirement. So Bitcoin is just going to start eating up all of the different ways that people are trying to save for their future. Right now, people can't just put money away under the mattress. They can't stuff, dollar bills in their mattress. they're not stocking up on gold bars. What people do is put money into stocks, often like a retirement account, like a 401k or an IRA. Other people, will get into real estate, all these things. None of those have the simplicity and strong number go up effect that Bitcoin does. It's a more pure asset for that. It's just better savings. And I think actually the reason a lot of people go towards these assets like stocks is because they have no other choice. They need to find a hard asset. Michael Saylor talks about this. You need to find something that will have some number go up so you can beat inflation. And the way that our system is set up, that's going to kind of channel the monetary energy towards stocks. And so people have all their 401ks, which kind of sucks for like an average person. Cause as an average person, they just want to be a good teacher. They want to be a good, mail delivery guy, whatever it may be. They shouldn't have to also think about how to be an investment guru just to think about their future and their children's future. So when you have something as simple as Bitcoin, where it's like stuffing money under the mattress, that's a way better deal for the average person, because they can just think like, I'm putting this money away and I know that my kids will have it in the future. For average people, there will either be, I would hope that they would learn to self-custody Bitcoin. They would learn how to hold their own Bitcoins and take control over it. And they would do a DCA strategy and buy Bitcoins every day or every week or whatever, and put it away into their Bitcoin wallet and just hold on to it for the long run. There's going to be other options, like for people who do have retirement accounts open, they can invest in certain entities like GBTC, Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, or even start their own self-directed IRA where they can hold Bitcoins themselves. And so they can put their retirement account into just good old-fashioned, sound money. And I think Bitcoin will just start to eat up more of these, pockets of finance that people are having to, throw money at to try to stay ahead of the inflation in the economy. So I think it's great for just the average person. It's putting money away under the mattress effectively, and then all of these other things like the your retirement accounts or whatever. I think of that like finding, pennies under the couch cushion and stuff. It's like, oh, here's some more money. Let me throw that into Bitcoin and get, more of the number go up technology.
Some of the concerns I see in the chat here, people are concerned that, government regulation, there's, I guess somebody's saying that India has apparently banned Bitcoin. What is the concern around that? Is that real ban going to be effective? Can it hold up? Are you concerned about government saying we're going to tax Bitcoin, or we're going to do some regulatory scheme which makes this asset, which is relatively a pristine asset, now a potentially compromised asset?
Yeah. So, India has chosen to ban cryptocurrencies, and I think that's going to end terribly, sorry, for them. As a nation too. And I actually feel really bad for the people of India. I also just feel bad for the government of India that they don't have the wherewithal to think more, into the future and how that's going to affect their governance strategies in this coming century. So, this is a problem. Different jurisdictions are going to react differently to this new technology coming about. However, in the Western world, like in the United States, things seem to be kind of oddly pro Bitcoin in the sense that it's not. They don't really. They haven't attacked it as much as you would think they would, based on how much banning of Bitcoin by the government kind of FUD that has spread around over the years. Today, we have sitting congressmen who are very vocal supporters of Bitcoin. People like Cynthia Lummis, the senator from Wyoming, and Representative Warren Davidson from Ohio, and Representative Patrick McHenry, and many others. The SEC chairman used to teach courses on Bitcoin at MIT, Gary Gensler. And there's just like more and more people kind of going in. I think yesterday was announced that the Federal Reserve hired as its chief innovation officer someone who has a history with Bitcoin. So it's just kind of it's getting in there. They're going to want in on number go up technology themselves, and I think where regulation would come in would probably be mostly around what they view as illicit finance. So they would be worried about kind of like money laundering and stuff like that. For just average people who are just buying and holding Bitcoins, that's not so much a concern. But it's also, we'll see if that even, comes to fruition. The Treasury Secretary, the past Treasury Secretary Mnuchin had proposed some rules extending some regulations in a rather egregious way towards self-hosted Bitcoins, meaning like Bitcoins you custody yourself, but they ended up extending the comment period, and then over time the whole thing kind of got dropped. So there really isn't actually as much inertia towards that in the United States as some of these people who are worried about that think. Other countries, I think, we're seeing India try. We'll see how that works out for them. My guess is there's still going to be black market Bitcoin stuff. And frankly, if a government explicitly tries to do anything to Bitcoin, that's actually a buy signal, because it's telling you that the government is going to be messing with the money, and you really need Bitcoins. So if a government says they want to ban Bitcoins, you really need some Bitcoins. So that also puts them in a position where, you're only adding to the Streisand effect if you try to speak negatively of it.
We go into some of the practicalities now. I mean, there's people talk about altcoins. I kind of know you're not a big fan of some of these other ones, Ethereum, and now there's the Dogecoin or whatever it's called. What are the practical, like if I wanted to say, hey, I'm going to do Bitcoin, I'm interested, you sold me on it, I want to put some money in there. How do I physically go about that? I mean, are there, there's like a thing on, I get it on YouTube on the videos, it's called Coinbase, and it's like an online storage for Bitcoin. Are you in favor of that? Do you think, are there better ways? I know Safe is a fan of something called, I think it's called a cold card.
Mm-hmm.
How would you advise someone to physically do this? What are the jumps you have to do? And there's Bitcoin, Satoshi, and there's sort of, imitators and different coins. How does somebody get into cryptocurrency? What do you recommend?
Yeah, so I'll start with the sort of practical side, and then we'll get into the, why Bitcoin only. To get into Bitcoin, first, the first step is just to, I would say the first step is to learn. People should read. I wouldn't suggest that people get into something that they have no knowledge of. But the first thing, once you've done that and you've made the decision that you want to get in, the first thing to do is you have to actually acquire Bitcoins. And the way you do that is you go to an exchange or a broker. So some of the best ones, in my opinion, are ones like River Financial and Swan Bitcoin, Square Cash App, and Coinbase also allows it. There's also exchanges like Kraken and Gemini. You go to one of these places and you connect your bank account, you purchase some Bitcoins, and now you own some Bitcoins. However, when you have Bitcoins on one of these brokers, there's a saying in Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins. So you're depending on Coinbase to tell, like you actually have IOUs. Coinbase says, oh, you have, a thousandth of a Bitcoin. But it's not until you actually hold the keys that it's actually yours for real. Because at any time, you don't know what's going to happen if there is some kind of regulatory thing, or just, Coinbase goes out of business. There's a million things that could happen that would mean that you no longer have access to the money because Coinbase is not giving you access. Maybe they're gone or whatever. So the goal is to then learn about self-custody. So self-custody means you send it to a wallet that you control. For this, people should look into hardware wallets as a good solution. So these are little devices that are specialized devices that do nothing but sign Bitcoin transactions. So they just hold some keys and they sign Bitcoin transactions. And there's a number of options. Cold Card is one of the best. Someone asked hardware what? And it's a hardware wallet. So Cold Card is one in particular that it even does something called air gapping. So it doesn't even have to connect to the computer. You use a micro SD card to get to it. And the reason that you do this is because you want something called cold storage. What cold storage means is you have keys that have never touched an online computer. Because if it's touched an online computer, the internet is a big and scary place, and you can get hacked. It's very easy. Like, people get hacked all the time. But if you have keys that have simply never touched an online computer, there's nothing that an internet hacker could do. It becomes more of a physical problem of just, you have to store your laptop somewhere. You have to store your keys somewhere. And there's many options people can do for that. But so these hardware wallets are effectively like a simple cold storage for individuals. So you create the keys on the device, and some of them plug into the computer. Ones like Cold Card, you can not even have to plug into the computer, so it's always separate. And that's what you use as your wallet. So people can learn about how to use hardware wallets. There's a number of good tutorials online if you search around. Cold Card has one in particular called BitcoinSecurity.guide. It's a very simple, bare bones explanation of what you would do to self-custody. And once you've self-custodied, you're also, eventually going to want to upgrade to having your own Bitcoin node, so that you're getting all of the information about your wallet and about the blockchain from your own thing. So you're not trusting anyone in the world about how much you own. You are only looking at the computer that you run for that data. So it's kind of it's always a learning process. There's even a thing once you get to the next step, you can get into what's called multi-sig, which allows you to lock the coins into multiple keys. So let's say you had 3 hardware devices, you could have them in 3 different locations, and you would need at least 2 of them to actually even make use of the coins. So if one of them's at home and one is, in another state or something, and one's in a safe deposit box, someone can't just rob your home for the Bitcoins, which makes it much safer. In fact, this kind of technology is something that, other monetary technologies have never had. We've never had a money where you could split up the security that way, which is very exciting. But basically, you want to work through that progression of just learning, getting your toes dipped in by just having some at all. And then when you get to an appreciable amount where you would feel more comfortable holding it yourself and not trusting some third-party institution to keep it safe, that's when you level up and you learn about hardware wallets. What I always recommend people do is, whatever amount of Bitcoins you may have, imagine that it was worth 10 times more, and think about, do you still feel comfortable with where you are? So if you went onto Coinbase and you bought $1,000 in Bitcoin, and you're like, yeah, it's fine to have $1,000 there. But then if you think, well, now it's $10,000, do you still feel comfortable just having $10,000 sitting on Coinbase? And with that mentality, you can kind of stay ahead of the number go up and think about what is next for what I ought to do for my security.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I guess what you're saying is you could start out on Coinbase, just because maybe it might be a little easier for the average person to do. Maybe get to a certain point and say, I've read more, I understand more how to do these, different storage techniques. And, so now I've got my own hardware wallet. I keep it somewhere in a safe in my home, or in the bank, in the safety deposit box. And then I guess you could still track the value of Bitcoin just by going online. You can see what it's worth every day, and
Right.
how much you have. And then you just, when you need to either add to, or I would assume you would suggest not taking away from, but as you continue to add more to your storage account, you just kind of do that way, and that's a safe way. Now, my understanding is, you've got to have certain passwords that you've got to either memorize, write down somehow to remember the password. If you forget that or lose the password, or perhaps you die and no one else knows what the password is, that money is gone, right? Is that true?
Yes. So there is, in Bitcoin, you're responsible. And I think, a lot of people have not had to be super responsible with their money, because they can just, they just have it on the bank account and they don't think about it. Bitcoin it is the you have a Swiss bank account in your wallet, in your home or whatever. You have to treat it as such, and with it does come some level of responsibility. So you bring up a good point with the words. So basically, what a lot of the wallets do is they back up the wallet in the form of 12 to 24 words, and you write down those words. You never tell anyone those words. You never type them in a computer, and you just hold on to them in a very safe space. Some people will also add a passphrase on top of that. But the point is, you have this mnemonic, and you keep that safe. And if anything were to happen to the device, you can recover the Bitcoins. If you were to die, if those words are known by another person, then they too can recover the coins. So, perhaps, if someone had it in a safety deposit box, and then on your death, the ownership went to someone else, that person would then have access to the information that can recover the coins. I'm not a estate planner, so I can't help with the specifics on that. But the important thing is, yes, you must keep those words secure and safe, and make sure they don't you don't want to lose them to a flood or a fire or anything like that. So actually, what a lot of people do is they have pieces of metal, like a metal plate, and they stamp the words into that metal plate, and so that way it can survive many types of natural disasters. So that it just you don't have to lose all of your money in a fire.
Yeah, that's I guess that's the interesting part, and the part that's kind of, you're just kind of thinking, if you're not responsible, you're 55, well, I'm 54, and God forbid you get demented, you know, and you can't remember your words anymore. And, I guess you got to sort of, if you want to pass, I mean, I assume the assumption is you want to pass this on to children or some foundation or some way to not lose that tremendous asset that you might build up.
Yeah, and this is something that for someone who's worried about that, they can talk with a sort of qualified estate lawyer who knows enough about Bitcoin to understand what you can do. There are people out there who focus on that.
What are the things people should not do? I mean, mistakes people would make. I mean, if somebody's going to get into it and said, "Hey, I like it. It sounds like a cool asset. It's, I'm just going to go and buy some, just let it ride and just buy some every month." And it seems, like you said, you don't have to be a day trader or a stock guy. And, it's just here to stick this money in here and let it watch it grow, or let it grow and don't mess with it. What are the mistakes that you see people making outside of selling the stuff? Are there other mistakes they make?
Yeah, I mean, I would say trading itself is often a mistake, because there's always going to be better traders who are able to get your coins from you. So I don't recommend that anyone involve themselves in trading. They should focus on saving. Other things that hodling is just the best strategy, and doing anything but hodling is just asking for trouble. So one of the things you were mentioning earlier, altcoins, and the reason that we focus on Bitcoin is because, when I think about Bitcoin, I'm thinking about what is the thing that I can pass wealth down to my grandkids and great grandkids. And so I want to think on a time scale of 100 years. Bitcoin is the only digital asset with the fundamentals that make it attractive for that kind of time frame. So it has, we've seen its decentralization in action. It's been able to withstand many, many attacks. We've seen that its monetary policy is exactly what it says on the box, and has maintained itself perfectly throughout its entire existence. And we know that it's going to continue to be that way. It has the biggest network. It has the most liquidity. Everything about it is it's just great. Whereas a lot of the other projects, what they'll do is trade different security features for marketing features, or they'll try to they ignore why Bitcoin made certain trade-offs that it did. Like, wouldn't it be great if Bitcoin had a gazillion transactions per second and we could all pay for our coffee on the blockchain? Like, that might be interesting, but that was also a deliberate choice because we needed to be able to remain decentralized. If there's a gazillion transactions, my computer at home will not be able to process all those transactions, and so I'll have to trust someone else, and I don't want to trust someone else. So Bitcoin makes these deliberate trade-offs. When a lot of these altcoins, they don't care about those trade-offs for whatever reason, some with good intent, some with extremely scammy intent. It almost doesn't matter. What matters to me is just the raw market fundamentals. And despite all of those altcoins coming and going, Bitcoin has just remained absolutely dominant through its entire time existing. And every time one of them comes out, sometimes they'll go really high, but then they'll just crash and tend towards zero. And even the number two crypto, Ethereum, it's just like it's been doing well against Bitcoin over the past year or whatever. But that's until you zoom out and realize that it's actually nowhere near what it used to be. And so it actually really hasn't made as much of a dent in the broader Bitcoin economy. And it's not very easy to run a full node and have everything verified and everything like that. So Bitcoin just remains the best monetary asset for saving for 100 years. So why focus on anything else?
Yeah, and like I said, just to go back to this, so you could buy whatever, $500 in Coinbase, and then later transition it into a hardware wallet. 3 months down the road. That's doable, correct?
Yeah. I think you want to take steps along the way. Like this is this takes time. Like I'm sure everyone has like a lot of questions. It takes a lot of time to learn. Everyone is still learning. No one knows everything about Bitcoin. So what you just want to do is you don't want to miss out just because you're worried about the price. If that's the reason, like you've already missed out. You need to think long term. But you don't. You want to be able to take those steps to learn and just level up. Have like very much a level up mindset of like, I'm comfortable doing this right now. And I know, I can trust Coinbase with $1,000, but when it's 10,000 or whatever, I can't. And so what do I need to learn to make the next step? So you just do it as a process. You don't have to learn it all at once. But always be learning and doing that leveling up and, thinking about your future and security and all of that.
One last topic, which is obviously is germane to this particular group. There are a lot of people, there would seem a lot of people that participate in Bitcoin that have also sort of bought into the carnivore, way of life. I know Safe likes to call fiat food and fiat money. And, so we've got the opposite with Bitcoin and carnivore. Why do you think that is? And is that still the case? Are you seeing a lot of people that have kind of, sort of been open-minded to one thing or now open-minded to the nutritional thing? And do you think there's any synergy within the carnivore community? Because, you see guys like Bill Gates, who has said he's not particularly bullish on Bitcoin. And Bill Gates is bullish on fake meat. Do you think through Bitcoin, we can help fight this dystopian synthetic meat future, or at least make sure we still have access to real true food?
Yes, absolutely. So, people should go to my website and you can see at bitstein.org and you can read my interviews with a couple journalist outlets. They were very interested in my lunch back when carnivory was still kind of new. And I talk about some of these topics. But yeah, so Bitcoiners there seem to be a lot of carnivore Bitcoiners or carnivore adjacent Bitcoiners. And I think one of the kind of main reasons why is because Bitcoin incentivizes low time preference behavior. What that means is Bitcoin gets us to think about the long term. We don't think about instant gratification. We think about our future. And because of that, if you want to save for the future and you want to think about your welfare in the future, your body matters. And so I think people are going to think a lot more about what they can do to make sure that their bodies are not just working great today while they're young and spry, but also deep into the future when, most people are getting very sick. And on top of that, I think that when we look at the history of nutritional guidelines and agricultural policy in the United States, I think it's heavily tied to fiat money in the way that, inflation inspiring certain policies to just focus on high margins at the cost of human health, because people just need to make money now rather than think about the health of themselves and their families later. And so with all that in mind, I think the other thing, just kind of culturally speaking, Bitcoiners are people that have been told they were wrong for many years now. So since the very beginning, everyone has told us how Bitcoin is a bubble, Bitcoin's a scam, it's a Ponzi scheme, it's like tulips, like there's all these things, like everything, they've thrown the whole book at us. And yet, despite all of that, Bitcoin continues to go up, number go up. So what that tells us is like, they say all they want, but Bitcoiners are very interested not in expert opinion, but real world results. And I think you would agree that that has an obvious mirror in the carnivore community because, to even suggest, I mean, it's become a little more mainstream now, but I remember the days to even suggest only eating meat. It was like one of those things where it's not even wrong because it's just so completely out of left field and alien that it's just bizarre and weird to even say. And yet we see so many people have so many results. You can go read all the success stories on MeetRx. People who are interested in results over expert opinion, and instead want just to see a new class of experts that base their expertise on how things actually work, are going to be drawn to carnivory and other nutritional interventions. And they're also going to be drawn to the money that actually works. So a money that actually allows them to save for their future. So I think that synergy between the actual time frame, like the time preference, as well as the sort of disavowal of bad expertise.
Yeah, I definitely see the definite, very similarities in there. So and I appreciate your time, Michael. Thank you very much for doing this. Is there a good source of reading material or a series of lectures or something you would recommend? Obviously, maybe you can describe what you have online. Where do people go to find out more about this? And then also, where do they find out more about you yourself personally?
Yeah, so I would recommend, if depending on what kind of literature people want, if you just want a nice long blog post, I highly recommend one called "The Bullish Case for Bitcoin" by Vijay Boyapati. If they want like a blog series, I recommend "Gradually Then Suddenly" by Parker Lewis. And if they want a full book treatment, I recommend Saifedean Ammous's book "The Bitcoin Standard." And to go from there, they can visit the Nakamoto Institute at nakamotoinstitute.org. They can go to, I think it's bitcoin.page, is Jameson Lopp's amazing set of Bitcoin resources that just has everything under the sun. And just kind of dig from there. If they want technical stuff, there's a book called Grokking Bitcoin that is very good. And yeah, also just, go online and ask questions, go hit up Bitcoin Twitter, and they're always excited to answer questions for noobs. So, don't feel hesitant to ask, as long as you show good faith. Bitcoiners are the nicest people in the world. And as for myself personally, the best place to find me is on Twitter, at Bitstein, Bitstein.
Michael, thanks very much. You've inspired me. I'm going to go eat some, I've got some dry aged steak that's coming out today that I've got to eat. So I'm going to eat some of that. Then I'm going to go buy a little bit of Bitcoin today. So it'll be my first day in doing that. So I really appreciate that. Look forward to seeing you in person again. I know we met up last time. We had a nice bunch of meet over at Terry Black's in Austin. And hopefully we get to do that again in the near future. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, everyone.
appreciate it, guys. And, you know, I don't know if you got what you guys think, but I think it'll be interesting, more stuff to learn about. So you guys have a great day, and we'll see you guys back tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody.